Welcome to the RTP Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Pamps. And today with me is the founder of Breakthrough Football, a former teammate of mine, Alex Jacobs.
How you doing, Jamie? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. I just want to give you a thank you for pushing me to do RTP, get this off the ground, and really get this going into 2023. I also want to say congratulations on your new contract in Australia. I know you leave for preseason coming up in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Excuse me. Thank you. I leave tomorrow morning. So
wow.
It's a quick turnaround after we'll finish up on this call. I gotta pack up a bunch of stuff, and tomorrow morning I leave, and it's gonna be over 2 days of flying. So,
but you must be excited. You must be excited for that, though, right?
I am absolutely buzzing.
And you're going to be in Australia for the World Cup.
Yes, I will. That's, I think, in like June, July. Australia, New Zealand. I'll be in Tasmania, the island off the south coast. So I would have to travel to the mainland to see any games, and I'm not positive I'll have time to do that, but I'm gonna try. I think it would be just an awesome experience to watch.
Absolutely. I'm excited for you. Keep us updated throughout your journey. So before we get into your path as a professional football player with soccer visa, Puerto Rico, your travels in Europe, and ultimately in Australia now, why don't you tell listeners about your upbringing in football, what inspired you to start playing football, and how you ultimately decided you wanted to pursue this professionally?
Well, I started playing pretty much as soon as I could walk or run. Must have been like 5 or 6 years old. I was kicking a ball. Around where I grew up, a lot of people played, we would call it soccer in New York. As I'm spending more and more time internationally, I'm using the word football now, so it's changing up the vocabulary. But I'll call it soccer just so it's not like anachronistic or something. But
sure.
Everybody played soccer, and that was just kind of like the thing for recreation for young kids. But then as people got older, they would quit and they would find other stuff that they like to do. And I loved it. I just loved playing, and I stuck through, and I rose to higher levels. I went to better teams, played with some club teams around New York in the Westchester area. And I was like, this is all I want to do. I had my family traveling for tournaments as a young kid, and very grateful and fortunate that we were able to do that. So I got, good experience playing around the country as a young kid and growing up. So, yeah, it was always fun. And when people would ask me when I was a young kid, what do you want to do when you're older? What's your dream? What do you want to do? I was like, I want to play football. I want to play soccer. I want to be a professional soccer player. And I was kind of like, oh, that's cute. People would say that's cute, but what do you actually want to do? You want to go to college, and then what do you want to study? Like, that was more of the path.
Right. And it's always someone saying, like you said, it's cute, it's nice to live your dream, but what do you really want to do? What's your plan B? What's your backup plan? And I always feel like a lot of people, when you tell them your dream of at least aspiring to be a professional athlete in general, they always look down at you like, yo, that's a cute dream, but that will probably never happen. You need to have a plan B just in case. And it's always interesting to think about that. Not a lot of people do play professional football, and a lot of us play for low minimum contracts, just food and housing, but we love playing this game so much that it doesn't matter how much money we're making, where we're living, as long as we get a pitch, a ball, and 2 goals, like, we'll be happy. And I think pursuing this at the end of the day as a professional footballer is like all about our happiness and our love for the game.
Yeah. Well said. That's what it's about. I didn't start doing this for the money. I did it because I wanted to play. If I could make a living playing this game, that's what I wanted to do first and foremost, for as long as I could do it. And that's still true, to this day. That's my underlying. Of course, making more money is always better. And I want to, for the sake of like getting better as a player over the course of my career, I want to get to those higher levels where I'm making, more money, better contracts. But of course.
Absolutely. We're always chasing levels, though. We're not chasing the money, like you said. We're chasing the levels of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The money
Yeah.
is secondary to what we're pursuing. We always want to keep chasing levels. We want to chase a higher level of football and just be the best football player that we can be at the end of the day and look back at our career and say, job well done.
Mm-hmm.
So you had an interesting upbringing with, you didn't go to a D1 school, you didn't go to a D2 school, you didn't go to a D3 school, JUCO, NEIA. You went to a D1 school, but you played on the club team. So how did that all come about?
Yeah, so I was thinking about applying to colleges and soccer all at the same time, in academics, what I wanted to study for a degree. I came from a more academically inclined family as opposed to athletics. Like, my parents are doctors. They weren't athletes. They weren't college athletes. So their emphasis in raising me was go to a good college and get a good education and get a degree that you can use for a job after you graduate. And not only them, it was the community that I grew up in. That was what was done. That's the path.
Right.
That's kind of
I think we're all
prescribed.
taught that growing up, go to college,
Certainly
get a
in the
degree.
U.S.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah,
That's always go to high school, graduate, go to college, get a degree, get a job, be
right.
set. But that's just not the reality of the situation sometimes. And we all have our own different paths.
Yeah, everybody has their own path. And
yeah,
that was me in like junior and senior year of high school, is trying to figure out what's my path going to be, weighing this dream against what the path was set up for me to be. What's the right decision? So anyway, I approached college applications with the view that I would go to the best school academically that I could get into, and once I was there, I would try out for a team, try out for the varsity team, and that would be like secondary.
right.
So because I knew I wanted to play where I was, but everybody told me, go to a school where you would be happy even if you weren't playing soccer. Go to a
And
school
you
where
went
you'd be
to
happy.
Cornell, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So how did that whole tryout process work for you at Cornell?
Unfortunately, it didn't. So I got there and I was like, all right, let me find the coach's office. We get in his voicemail or something, or in his email, and get some FaceTime and introduce myself. But it just wasn't possible, unfortunately. I tried and tried. I called, I emailed. Oftentimes I wouldn't get an answer. There were a couple of times where I did get answers from like assistant coaches. At one point I waited outside the varsity practice for them to finish, and the coach walked out, and I said, excuse me, hey, I introduced myself, told him my situation. I said, I want to play. Can you give me a look? Just let me hop in a training session, whatever, just a chance.
Right.
And he said, no, we don't do that. This guy when I was a freshman, it was his first year he came from Stanford as an assistant coach, where they won the national championship. So he had good experience, he had a good resume, and a good strategy and plan for what he wanted to implement at Cornell. And that included a lot of recruiting and scouting, and not walk-ons from like the student body. So
right.
Unfortunately, I didn't get that chance. So I played club soccer for 4 years.
Right. And he was trying to establish his own regime, his own foundation. He wanted to bring his own guys in. And unfortunately, that kind of set you up for what the reality of the professional football game was going to be like. You were going to get a lot of no's, sit outside a lot of practices, travel hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles, just to be told no.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that, but yeah, in a way, it was like my first bigger rejection. And I just had to learn from that and be adaptable.
And that's all you can do. You got to be adaptable in this game. So you played center back in club, but you played striker in club college. So I know this, the center back Alex, but I don't know the striker Alex. So how did that that duality of playing striker and center back come to be?
Yeah, I mean, I when I was playing as a young kid, I was playing striker or like winger. I was fast. Um, I still am fast, but I'm not the fastest I'm not the fastest on the pitch anymore. Um, but certainly as a young kid, I was quick, and I love to score goals, as
As
pretty much
everyone does.
everybody does. So I was always playing striker, and then as I grew up a little bit more, my attributes were more suited for center back, and that was told to me by a coach I had when I was like 17 or so,
Hmm.
16, 17. And so I started, that coach was my club coach at home in New York. And so like I went to college and I was playing in the club team, and I played striker there because I still wanted to be scoring goals. And um, but when I would come home in the summers or in the breaks and be training with my former club team, that
Hmm.
coach who saw me as a center back was slowly kind of grooming me and teaching me how to play that position, which is very different from striker. But
Right. Obviously.
some things translated, from like my own skill set and experience as a striker
Hmm.
to that position. The seeing the whole field. So
Right.
yeah.
What attributes did you bring from being a striker to being a center back?
Well, I was quick, and I had a relatively good pace
Hmm.
for striker, and bringing that back to the back line has been extremely useful, because now I'm like one of the fastest in the back line, and I can keep up um, with the quicker forwards that I'm facing against.
Right.
So that's really useful. A lot of center backs, unfortunately, don't have um, as great mobility a lot of the time. So I pride myself on that. Um,
Love that.
and yeah, and also, I mean, as a striker, you play with your back to goal a lot of the time,
Hmm.
and so moving back to center back, I could see the whole field now.
Hmm.
Um, I was able to use that greater visibility
Hmm.
to incorporate like reading the game more, which was always a skill of mine. I could read the game well. Um,
Right.
yeah.
And I'm sure being a striker at that time, and then making the transition to center back allowed you to kind of have a better understanding of either the opponent that you were facing and what they would do to try to get you off them, or how their movement off the ball would be. And from experiences what you would do back in the day, and how to counteract that.
Yeah, spot on. Um, I was coached a lot as a forward. Some good coaches back in the day when I was really young, and I took that stuff on board to become a better striker.
Hmm.
And so, 100%, I would use that as a center back to maybe anticipate and predict the movements that the forwards that I'm now defending would make. I knew what annoyed me as a forward that the center backs defending me would do. The actions that they would take. So I learned from those center backs, and I started kind of using that in my game as a defender now. So plus, like when I would play on teams now as a center back, I can offer good advice to other defenders and strikers on this is what's going to annoy strikers,
Hmm.
like as a defender, and tell the strikers, this is what you can do to throw off a defender, or make them, forget about you, or just be annoyed by you, pester them. So
Hmm.
it's been really useful.
Gotcha. Well, you didn't lose your goal scoring touch. You scored 2 goals for us in the league down in Puerto Rico. So you still have that touch, and you still have that quality to finish. And I love that. So, what was the time gap between graduating from Cornell and then traveling down to Costa Rica to meet Joe Funicello, be with Soccer Visa for those 3 months in 2021?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2020 in May. The pandemic was about 3 months old,
Mm-hmm.
or 2 months old. Things were starting to close down. So I got home and I just started training,
Mm-hmm.
right away. So, um, I was at home training by myself a lot of the time, doing what I could to make money on the side as a private coach.
Right.
And then I I played with a team in the fall of that 2020, as it seemed like things were getting a little better with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And that took me to the late winter, early spring of 2021. I got on a team in the USL2, Westchester Flames, and was playing with them. Got injured, missed a whole bunch of time, and it was kind of a struggle of a first half of that year, really first like 2/3 of that year.
Mm-hmm.
I had like torn a ligament in my ankle, and it was just trying to recover from that. So I only got like 3 games for that season in the USL2.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I was not having a lot of success in general with the beginning of my career. I was like, man, what am I,
What are you doing? You're
my parent,
questioning yourself, doubting
my,
yourself.
yeah. And my parents said like, you have 6 months,
Oh, wow.
you have 6 months to make this happen. And then we're going to have another conversation. So it was just a weird time and a confusing time and a frustrating time, but that brought me to fall 2021. And I was like, I gotta take a risk. I gotta do something. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of New York. And I came across Soccer Visa, and I went down there for 3 months in Costa Rica.
I love that. It's interesting too that you had to do something that you had never done before and take the risk and just beeline it straight to Costa Rica just to have the opportunity to get scouted and just get a trial with someone and really start propelling your career. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case either. Just because COVID was doing better in the United States doesn't necessarily mean it was doing better in other places around the world. Costa Rica not being the exception. We didn't have any scouts come out, unfortunately, due to COVID circumstances, but we did learn a lot from Joe and Soccer Visa in regarding networking, how to contact agents, cold calling teams, getting on LinkedIn, finding Facebook, finding the trainer, the assistant, the kit manager, finding anyone just to get in with a team. Like, hey, here's my highlight tape, and just getting your foot in the door. But with Costa Rica and Soccer Visa, what were some of the biggest things that you learned from them? And then what were also some of the personal challenges that you had that helped you grow into the football player that you were today?
Yeah, good question. You touched on some of those points in terms of things that I took on board from that time down there. One of the biggest ones was networking. In college, yeah, like job fairs and stuff, which I didn't tend to make myself present at, but I would always hear the word networking thrown around, and that was a word that I thought was reserved for finance people or tech people and going into those industries.
I couldn't agree more. Whenever I was younger and I heard my mom say, "Oh, I'm networking with this office or I'm networking with these people," I always thought that it was more from a business perspective. Like, oh, the word networking is only for business. It's not for interpersonal relationships or can even be translated into the world of sports. But lo and behold, we found out that football is a business and
Hmm.
networking is a part of business.
Yeah, yeah, that was the same thing. You took the words out of my mouth, and it was something I already knew, but not quite to the extent. This was really made aware. Football is a business, not only at those top 5 leagues that we watch on TV, but even more cutthroat at the lower leagues where the margins are so much slimmer,
Mm-hmm.
and the money is much more few and far between. Teams are not working with so much capital. So
Right.
um,
And they want to
yeah,
get
I mean.
promoted. They want to make sure that if they get promoted, they get those TV rights, they get more revenue, they get more income, they get better players, and so on and so forth. And like you said, I would also agree that the margins are even finer down in the lower leagues because the emphasis on winning is so apparent and just on the just just emphasized heavily that we don't want to take any risk. We are going to calculate everything down to the last cent to invest into
Mhm.
the team to give us the best chance of being promoted, to get more money and move on and so forth. So, like I said, nothing happened from Costa Rica. Unfortunately, COVID was still rampant down in Costa Rica, and no one was really able to get in and out of the country. So we left Soccer Visa in Costa Rica, wounded, tails between our legs, with not really a whole lot of options going forward. Now we're a little bit more educated. We know how to network. We know how to cold call. We know what LinkedIn is. We know how to get in contact with some of these teams. But with January approaching and preseason for the USL1, NISA, and a lot of teams around Europe, the transfer window is going to be closing at the end of the month. How did you cope with not being able to achieve what you wanted to initially from Costa Rica? And then how did the training go between leaving Costa Rica and then ending up in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, it was hard to cope. It felt like another failure in a way. That's not to say, again, that there weren't a lot of lessons learned and there was a lot of value in my experience. But yeah, for the ultimate goal of getting an opportunity and getting seen and getting signed, I didn't see those results. So it was frustrating. But I listened to a lot of like motivational speeches when I'm working out or something, and one of those messages that is repeated again and again is like failure is just it's not the end. It's just a hurdle. It's just a hurdle. It's just another step.
Right.
And
it's an opportunity to grow.
Yeah. So and some people say one door closes, another maybe 5 doors open, whatever. However you want to look at it. That was the task for me in that period after Costa Rica, is to really buy into that process. Look, this is just another failure. Let me take the things that will help me from that experience and move on, and take that next step. So, I went back and I continued training, and I was, networking more after that. And, I had a lot of really good friends, you being one of them, and the guys that we went to Puerto Rico with, from my time in Costa Rica. So that was another thing that I took from that. And it ultimately changed my life. I can see that directly in the past year. It has changed my life, just the people that I met in 3 months. So, I look at that and that is a huge positive. So even though at the time I was thinking, wow, like this was a failure, it was honestly the furthest thing from that.
It is. It definitely, it sucks having to make that phone call to your parents and say, hey, it didn't work. I failed. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And then having to move back in with your parents and kind of figure out where to go from there. It's defeating, it's upsetting. But ultimately we have to buy into the process. We have to trust in the process. And during those moments of defeat, those are when we have to look in at ourselves and really reaffirm that we believe in what we're doing and the cause that we're doing this for, and just playing this game, and ultimately, like I said, chasing levels to get better and better. And that there's going to be one yes out of the 50 no's, out of the 100 no's. There's going to be one yes. And when that yes does come, we pounce on the opportunity. And that yes came in the form of one of the friends that we made in Costa Rica with Juan, and getting the American experiment together for, say, down in Puerto Rico, and really assembling everyone to chase the league title and be professionals at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first real season out of the country. You spoke a little bit about it like a few minutes ago, in terms of doing something that I'd never done before, in terms of moving out and taking that risk. Costa Rica was like 3 months of training. This in Puerto Rico was a season. We were going to be with a team. We were being provided food and housing. So we were being compensated. So it felt like, the first big step to get my career, your career, our careers collectively off the ground.
Absolutely.
And, it was a great season. There were ups and there were downs. There were a lot of stressful moments, a lot of triumphant moments. But I'm so grateful for Juan, primarily, for setting up that opportunity to get down there initially, and for the team and the community in Quintana that welcomed us and taught us how to fit in and belong, and treated us like family, where
from
we
the
felt
get-go, from the jump, they treated us with open arms. They gave us time to learn and develop how to speak Spanish. Obviously, we spoke a little Spanish in Costa Rica, but we weren't forced to speak Spanish in Costa Rica for the most part, because on the pitch we spoke English with our teammates. Everyone else came from the States. We spoke English primarily. We went back to the home base and we spoke English primarily. But in Puerto Rico, it's a little bit different. Not a whole lot of us knew the language. We had Danny and Juan to be able to translate for us. But for those of us who didn't speak Spanish, we genuinely had to learn how to speak Spanish on the streets and on the pitch as well. And they gave us time and leeway and gave us the patience that they didn't have to give us. They didn't know us. They gave us the patience to learn. And it was, again, one of those growing moments that we were going to fail a lot when we were speaking Spanish to them because we had no idea what we were saying. But they gave us leeway in the grace period to ultimately be able to translate or communicate with them on the pitch. And I think that's where a lot of our success came from.
Yeah. I mean, it was a process, part of the process, right?
It is,
and learning a new language is difficult. Again, we had our two boys living with us too, who were bilingual, and that helped tremendously. And I'm so grateful for that. And that's just part of taking these risks and moving away from home to play with a team or go on trial, find a team. It's not always going to be English. That's the first language. So
correct.
Again, it's just part of being adaptable and professional. This is part of the job description is, you're not going to be comfortable.
You're not going to be comfortable. So you're not going to be comfortable, and more likely than not, you probably will need to learn a second language at some point. If you look at any of the biggest football players around the world, who's a good example? Luis Diaz for Liverpool, as he's Colombian, and he has to learn how to speak English. Thierry Henry was French, and he had to learn how to speak English. Obviously, English is the universal language, so I always feel like English is a little bit easier to come by with social media and a lot of our popular pop culture. But at the same time, they still had to learn a brand new language, which isn't easy by any means.
No, and learning a second language is important, but as you continue to travel, you might have to learn bits and pieces of a third language and a fourth language and maybe a fifth language if you're lucky and finding opportunities. I mean, I was in Albania in like the fall, and they don't speak Spanish there. Of course, they don't speak. They don't really speak English. Some people speak English, but especially in the city I was in, not a lot of English being spoken. I know some French. No French there. This was Albania. They spoke Albanian.
Right.
And I had never heard the language before, and it was a very difficult adjustment. But I picked up a few words and a few important words that would be spoken on the pitch: left, right, up, back, things like that. So, and again, I had some teammates to help me, but it's difficult. It's difficult.
It's definitely difficult. Well, going back to Puerto Rico, you were our captain for the first couple of games, and then unfortunately the other team captain kind of came in and superseded you. He was a local, knew the guys very well. How did you feel in that moment being named captain? And also, how did you feel being stripped of your captaincy? And did that affect how you played the game or how you looked at the game going forward?
Well, I didn't quite understand it at first of like, if I was captain the first few games, why are we changing it? Like whenever I join up with a team, even for trial, or if I'm going to play with a team, I want to be the captain. I want to be a face that my teammates can look to lead. So that's always one of my goals wherever I play, and I wanted to do that in Puerto Rico, and that was the case for the first few games, like you said. And so it was a little bit disappointing to have that kind of taken away. I wouldn't describe it as being stripped of the captaincy, because I don't think that term to me connotes like I messed up, I did something that got my captaincy like taken away. I think it was more of a situation like for whatever reason they allowed me to take that position for the first few games. I think the previous established captain, the guy from the community, was injured or something or not playing. But as the season started to pick up, they were like, okay, he's our captain. Like, he's going to wear
Right.
the armband. Like, this is our guy. So I didn't feel like I had messed up per se, but it was certainly disappointing. But I learned that while I think wearing the armband as a visible symbol is important to whoever's wearing it for the team, it's certainly not everything. And without it, I can still be a leader on the team, a vocal person, leading from the back, communicating with my teammates, and lifting everybody up in those tough moments. So, whether I was wearing that armband or not, I was going to do that. I was going to do that no matter what.
You touched on it just there. No matter that, people look towards you, towards leadership, regardless if you were wearing the band or not. And playing alongside you down in that league, I saw that the refs and the other opponents would look to you as the unspoken leader, the uncaptained band captain of our team, that if there was a conflict, if there was any issue with a foul or a bad decision by the ref, they would come to you and not necessarily our other captain who wore the band. A lot of the coaches and players respected you and knew that you were arguably the best, if not the best, center back in the league at the time. So, like you said on it, it doesn't matter who's wearing the captain's band, as long as you are a leader on the pitch and how you hold yourself to that respect of playing at that level at a high consistently, no matter what the situation is, you're still going to be that regardless if you wear the band or not. And I love that about you. And I love seeing you take your leadership role and your abilities as a leader to the next level because of the circumstances that you had to face down in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. And I appreciate all the words you've said. It means a lot because, it gives me, of course, feedback and sort of like feedback to build on, and okay, I'm doing something right. If you saw that, if other teammates saw that, so even if I wasn't wearing the armband, so it's always something I strive for. Like I said, wherever I go, I want to be a leader. I want to be more consistent. That's always another goal of a professional, is be as consistent as you can, and that
Absolutely.
will earn you opportunities almost more than anything else. So
I couldn't agree more.
And keeping a level of concentration, even in when you're down 2-3-4-0, if you feel like the game is lost, keeping that level of concentration, that level of effort, that's when it's hardest, right? That's
Absolutely.
when it's hardest. And
it's easy when you're winning. Everything's easier when you're winning. But what
course.
happens when you face adversity? Who do they turn to? The captain. You lead by example, and no matter what the situation is, you rally the troops and we go again, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah. And another thing that comes to mind is in those tough moments, like sometimes I've seen people get negative, and try to lead with negativity, and I've never ever bought into that.
Right.
I even sometimes see it more at higher levels, when players can get like impatient, frustrated with maybe some players that they see as weaker links. I don't think that's a good way to lead. I think what's worked for me as a leader is to make the players around me, the players that I might see as weaker links, make them better by lifting them up. Find something that they did positive, and reinforce that and pray, and motivate them and encourage them. So even in those times of adversity, to be positive through and through and be positive consistently.
Absolutely. So you have a couple of seasons under your belt now. How do you approach the off season now? What's your how many days, weeks do you take off before ramping it back up to get into peak condition going into preseason?
Yeah, I don't take a ton of time like off where I'm not doing anything, because I don't feel good when I take too much time off.
Right.
Where I'm doing nothing, where I'm not doing any working out or going for runs. Like I don't feel good. I don't like it. So I mean, maybe I'll take a week where I'm doing nothing, or 2 weeks if I'm if I'm feeling really burnt out. Of course,
Do you ever
everybody.
go a time without touching the ball at all, or are you just always touching the ball at some point, whether it's juggling, doing some wall passes, just staying connected with the game in some way?
I mean, after a season, yeah, I might go a week or two
Yeah,
without touching the ball, just to sort of hit that refresh, that reset button. Um,
absolutely. We all need it.
but
Even after the games that
yeah.
we played, I think 18 or 20 games in Puerto Rico. Like at that point, we're shot. We've been going for 6 months at that point. Like it's brutal on the body, and that rest is necessary and it's a part of the game that
Mhm.
you don't realize how much it's needed and warranted at a young age, because at the younger age we would have 3 games in a day, then we go into the next day with 2 or 3 more games, and we just kept going. But as we got older, game became more physical and our body's taking more of a toll and beating. And that,
Mhm.
I'd say about a week or two of just decompressing, pressing the reset button, and just getting back in line with your body and how you're feeling, and not feeling hurt, and going into slowly ramping up your off-season training in a good manner, starting it off right. Maybe it doesn't have to be sprinting or anything like that, but just starting to go pick up the jogs, get some touches on the ball, just get back into the mindset of playing football.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in that vein of getting your body right and preventing injury and overuse, that is one of the biggest focuses of any off season for me nowadays. Is so a week or two of rest, and then um, for the majority of that stretch of off season, whether it's like a few months or maybe as much as like 4 months or 5 months.
Right.
Like after Puerto Rico, it was a long break, but um, injury prevention and prehab. So that includes a lot of strengthening work. If I want to put on, depends what my goals are, and that changes kind of depending on the season I had and what I think I need to improve on.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be a lot of strengthening work where I want to put on, let's say, 5 or 10 pounds of muscle. Then I'll be, for the first 4 to 8 weeks, lifting a lot and
Mm-hmm.
lifting heavy, and then maybe as I get a little bit closer to preseason, I pick back up with more interval running and getting miles under my belt for more cardio fitness. That's a little bit quicker to get back, and if you want to put on muscle, as you know well as an athletic trainer, like if I want to put on muscle, running a lot is going to be working against me.
Right.
So maybe I split up those focuses in my off season where I'm lifting for a while first. I feel like I put on the muscle that I need, and then after that, I maintain that with maybe a couple workouts per week, and start ramping up the running ahead of preseason.
Right. So on top of working out, doing your cardio, doing your strength training, you have to do on ball training and whatnot. So what is that like for you as a center back? What does your training method look like? Do you have to have other players out there with you, or are you training by yourself? What's the training process like during the off season for you?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's difficult depending on where I'm located to find consistent players to train with that are of a similar mindset, which is important to me. I want to be surrounded by other people that are going to make me better,
Right.
and that are pushing themselves too.
Hmm.
So um, I've been in New York for several months now, and there's so many people in New York and New York City, especially. So I've been able to find some good groups and some good players to surround myself with. I do a lot of my training alone.
Hmm.
Um, Plus, like when I'm only counting on myself, um, I know I can rely on myself and I'll be dependable on myself in terms of timing. And when I say I'm going to do a training session, it's only up to me. And so that is easier for planning and scheduling purposes.
Right.
So I do end up training alone a lot, and I can work on specific things that I want to improve on. But certainly, getting in small group, and even a little bigger group training sessions is vital
Right.
because
Absolutely.
if you can get good reps, you can do things with groups that you can't do alone, of course. So
I think
it's a
it's always
balance.
it is a balance, absolutely. I think it's also like you said, it's hard to find those people with the same mindset. Not necessarily um, striving to be a professional football player, but striving to be a better football player in general, whether they're at the college level or at the high school level. And so I always think it's harder as we get older to find that group of people or those individuals that want to get better, that want to get out at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., go for 60, 90 minutes hard, no complaining, no
Mm-hmm.
time wasting, no like chit chat and whatnot. Like just
Yeah.
do the work and get after it. And especially for me as a goalkeeper, it's super hard to find someone like that because it's either another goalkeeper or it's a striker that kind of just wants to take shots. And it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to find someone who understands goalkeeper training and then also find time to work on game specific stuff with shot stopping, 1v1s, breakaways, passes out of the back with pressure on you and whatnot. So finding that group of people or just finding that one or two individuals that, that you can rely on is massive. But I agree with
Mm-hmm.
your point for the most part. You're probably training by yourself, I would say 80% of the time. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to get creative with what you're doing because you don't want to continue to do the same triangle drills or square drills or dribbling drills and whatnot. You want to change it up. You want to keep evolving your game, and you have to keep evolving your practices and your training sessions. And that's when it comes down to a methodology of working out, strength training, cardio, on the field stuff, um, taking care of your body, doing rehab, getting massages, foam rolling, ice baths, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Even when you're not in season, you're still a professional football player off the pitch and going through that building up and ramping up into the season.
That's 100% right.
Mm.
There's so much. There's so much that goes into it. It's a lot of little things.
Yep.
A lot of little things that often go unseen, but doesn't mean they're any less important.
Correct.
So still have to do them. Still have to do them. And you describing the actual training sessions. The more I think about it, I mean, it's so crucial to have um, not only a good individual routine and to holding yourself accountable, but getting really it's I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but the like-mindedness is big because
It's huge.
it's very frustrating if you show up to a training session and people are joking around and the pace is slow and the intensity is low and
Absolutely.
I might be sitting there and be like, what am I doing? Like, I would have
I'm
had a
wasting
much
my
better training session. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm wasting my time at this point because I can push myself by myself at a better pace than this. I 100%
Right.
like that is a very frustrating thing. But I mean, sometimes you're just gonna have sessions like that, or you're just gonna have a group of
Yeah.
people like that, and that's
Yeah.
when you, as a professional, say, you know what, it's not the best day. These guys aren't going to give it their all, but you know what, I am.
Mm-hmm.
So even in those bad
Yeah.
situations, you can still find something to take out of that and become a better professional, have a good training session. Even if it's like, oh man, like the pace isn't good, the quality is good. Yeah, you can demand more of those from those guys, a better pass, better service. But
Mm-hmm.
what you do is the end product of your efforts and
Mm-hmm.
what you do when you are going in during the set or during the training session and whatnot.
Yeah. So true. So
So
true.
you had an interesting situation in Albania. It looked like it was all said and done. It seemed like you were about to sign your name on the dotted line, and we were all so happy for you and excited. What happened?
Yeah. Oh man, it was again a stressful period of about 3.5, 4 weeks.
Hmm.
I went over there and I was on trial for about a week. I was told by the end of like that week, after about 3, 4 training sessions and a friendly, that they would make a decision and say, yes
Hmm.
or no, get out of here. And yeah, after the first period of a week, they were like, we need some more time. We need to see you. We need to see you in training more. And I was like, okay, look, these things happen. I might not get the answer, um, whether it's the answer I want or not, right yet. So I have to be patient. So that was kind of the beginning of the unpredictability of that situation,
Right.
because they said they needed some more time, but then I think it was like the next day that they came and told me, oh, we're going to sign you. And I was like, oh, I thought you needed more time.
Yeah. Happy
But
days.
okay, I won't I won't question a good thing. Great, like let's get this done. Like let's put pen to paper and um, put the business side behind us. And I want
Just play
to
football.
fully, play football and fully settle in mentally and physically. But it wasn't going to be that simple.
Right.
That process was dragging on and it wasn't happening. And then there were documentation issues and federation issues with the transfer. Um, and then there were issues with like the number of foreign players that they had. So then I was told, we're not going to sign you because we're prioritizing attackers and we have a limited number of foreigners. We want like five or I think it was like five forwards or midfielders. So
Jeez.
like, so long. And I was like, oh man, I won't swear on here, but I was certainly, I was upset.
Frustrated for sure.
So I started, making plans to leave and reaching out to other agents and teams. But then the next day I showed back up to training or 2 days later rather. And they were like, actually, we're going to go ahead and move forward with you.
Oh my God. What?
So this is just a roller coaster, man. It was a roller coaster. And at that point I was like, honestly, I don't want to get, and I was having other talks with what eventually led to be this contract in Australia. So
Yeah.
and that was looking more promising. So with this like back and forth, I was like, I don't think it's a good idea to get involved really with this team. And turns out that was definitely the right decision. They terminated a contract, violated their contract with another player afterwards, and
Wow.
it's not a good situation. And I mean, I'm lucky to have gotten out of there with maybe quote unquote lost some time, but I learned lessons and met some people. Lost a lot of money, or at least spent a lot of money
Right.
on it on that experience.
Absolutely.
But
But it
I
was an
came out of there with
investment. Sorry.
an investment, and I came out of there with some lessons learned and moved on. It was just another obstacle, another hurdle. So
Another part of your path. So now I want to get into a little bit more of the mindset that you have going into practices and games. So what does a typical practice look like for Alex? Do you prepare mentally for a practice, or is it kind of just like, okay, it's practice another day, I'm gonna get better, or do you get set up for it? Do you get hyped for it? What's going on during it? Like what's going on before a practice for you? You're in the locker room.
you're asking about a team training?
Yep, team training. We're in Puerto Rico, or you're in Albania, or going to Australia. Like what is the mentality going into a team session for you?
Yeah, I mean, I get, depends on the moods. It's hard to lift my own spirits all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the grind. So it depends on kind of the mood and the team setting. But generally, yeah, I'm excited to go out and practice, and like, wow, another day, and especially if the weather is nice, man.
Absolutely, especially down
Or
in
if
Costa
it's
Rica and Puerto Rico, where it's like, oh, it's nice
oh
every single day.
oh man, we were blessed. Or
We
if it's
were
like a nice amount of rain, like a little bit of a drizzle, and
little
it's like that's
drizzle.
also really nice.
Oh,
But the weather's not so important. But yeah, I mean, I just think to myself like, wow, another day to go out and train and get better.
right.
Because this is my life. Like I'm living the dream. So
Mm-hmm.
it's um, you know, not easy, but I don't have to spend a lot of effort getting excited for a training session. So yeah, I mean, and I prepare. I visualize, what do I want to do at this training session? What was I not good at yesterday?
Right.
Or replay some moments where I thought like, I didn't handle myself, I didn't carry myself, my personality in that moment
Mm-hmm.
that well. How can I take that and be better tonight? So certainly, I have to be intentional. I have to be intentional with the things that I want to get better at every single day.
Right. So you touched upon visualization and replay. What are you visualizing before a practice? Are you replaying the good? Are you replaying the bad? Are you replaying so what are you reinforcing with your imagery and your visualization going into a session?
Yeah, I mean, I'm replaying everything. If I had like a great moment, I like to replay that. Can I do that again?
Mm-hmm.
But and I think this is kind of human nature. The negatives stick out. At least I remember the negatives more often, more vividly.
Right.
Um, so I replay those more, I would say, and I would spend some time thinking, these things I did badly, I did poorly, or I
Mm-hmm.
can do better. Um, and and yeah, certainly a visualization for the upcoming training session. Like, how am I going to do that better? I'll visualize the little things.
Mm-hmm.
In the first 15 minutes when we're doing some technical warm up, like I want to make all my passes perfect. Can I
Right.
make all my passes perfect? And they're not always going to be. Very rarely, all my passes are perfect. Almost
Mm-hmm.
never, they're going to be all perfect. But if I can be intentional about and very focused about making as many of them perfect as possible, then that's the goal, right? And can get better about that, the little things every single day. Because I'm a firm believer in, we as a player, I have to build up. That starts with the little things, doing those little
Mm-hmm.
things correctly. The little, if I'm setting a pass back for a player to have a good quality pass on the ground pinged into
Mm-hmm.
the next player, I have to do that right, and then I build up and I get more confident. I can hit a long ball, and other things like that.
Right. That's awesome. I love to hear that. I was always what works for me best is always highlighting the positives. Obviously, I would go over the negatives, but I would do that more in a film session of, okay, okay, I did this wrong, or I played this pass pretty poorly, or maybe I could have distributed it better in this situation. But whenever I go into a practice or a game setting, I always like to emphasize the positives. Oh, I made this great save, or I did make this good pass, or I held this ball really well, or I came out for this 1v1 really well. So as a goalkeeper, we're always taught to have a really short memory
Mhm.
of it happened. What can we do? How do we learn from it? Let's put it in our vault, and then let's move on from it, because there's no sense of there's no time to be wrong about something. It's kind of on the fly learning. Obviously, you can go over it in film sessions, and we can improve upon it in practice, and that's what practice is for. But when it comes to, for at least for a goalkeeper stuff, it's more of a visualization, just in reinforcing the positive manners, and then
Mhm.
implementing what we learned from our mistakes into practice and into the game. But game time comes up for you. Does anything change for you? Does the mentality change? Does the visualizations change? Do you say any affirmations? What gets you locked in for game day, the most important day of the week?
Yeah, there's nothing like game day. I mean, it is different from training just because of the, it's a game. Like, this is where it counts, right? This is, um, we need 3 points. We need to move up the league table. Are we looking for promotion? Are we looking to win a trophy? Um, so there's something electric about that. And the night before, when I'm trying to fall asleep and I'm, a little bit restless, thinking, visualizing, well, how am I going to play? What am I going to do? Am I going to get myself a goal? Am I going to, have a goal saving tackle, whatever it is? Um, yeah, and then in the day, depending, usually the games are at night. I've had in my experience recently, so I'll
Yeah.
have like my morning, I'll eat, good breakfast, some oatmeal or something like that, and just try and take it easy for most of the day and relax, drink a lot of water, take on board a lot of water, um, not be too like sedentary. Take a couple walks throughout the day. Um, Again, eat some good food, eat a good lunch. Um, yeah, and then game time comes in terms of visualizations. Like, the visualizations will be a little bit different just because of this is a game instead of we're doing some drills in a training session.
Right.
So I'm thinking much more about how I want to organize, how I want to organize my team. I remember in Soccer Visa, Joe, this stuck with me. What he said is that the job for a center back are three things: win your battles, organize your team, and balance the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm repeating that to myself. I'm repeating that to myself on game day. These are the three, you know, top three things I have to do as a center back.
Right.
I have to
Everything
win my
else comes
battles.
secondary from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And pretty much those three categories sum up and cover everything I'm going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every foot I'm covering on the field, I'm either winning a battle, I'm on the ball and I'm balancing the game, or not moving necessarily for this, but organizing my team. That's a lot of energy spent organizing the team and having to look around and being aware and reading the game. So these are the things I'm thinking about for game day. Yeah.
I love that. Do you ever go into situation? Do you ever do any visualizations of not mistakes that you make, but visualizations of what if this goes wrong, in the sense like you visualize a bad pass back or a bad touch, and then you visualize how to react to it or how you would handle that situation. So when it does come up in the game, you've already seen it happen before and you know how to get out of it with no pressure added to you.
It's an interesting point. Honestly, not the first part of your question. No, like I'm not visualizing necessarily mistakes that I'm making, a bad touch or something, or a bad pass. I'm not. That doesn't come into my head. And now that you mention it, I don't think it would be helpful for me, because I want to spend my time and my intentions visualizing positive things. So, but of course, the second part of your question, in terms of like being prepared,
Right.
and anticipating, as opposed to, I think, reacting to potentially dangerous situations in the game as a center back, is very important. And that's part of my visualizations for sure. Like, am I going to chase down, an attacker who's broken free and our shape is broken down, and am I going to catch up to him and make a good tackle? Or I remember seeing this Maldini quote, like, if as a center back, if you have to make a tackle, you've already made a mistake.
I love that quote.
Yeah, man, it's changed the way I've thought about defending, to be much more proactive and anticipatory, and the focus more on reading the game and organizing that team, in terms of the one of those three like main tenets of being a center back: organize your team. So yeah, that's more of what I'm thinking about.
Gotcha. That's still fantastic. So we're going to wrap up here, but I'll ask one more question for you. What is the biggest takeaway from your career so far? You've gone from playing club at a college to then going to soccer visa in Costa Rica to Puerto Rico to Albania and now Australia. What has been the biggest takeaway from you so far in this journey and what you've learned?
First thing that comes to mind is kind of like a two-part idea. Number one, and I'm going with this theme of intentionality and being deliberate. I have to work my butt off to make this dream, because I'm already living this dream. Even if I'm not signed with the team, this is the dream that I'm living. I have to work my butt off to continue this way. If I'm not doing stuff every day, I'm falling behind and I'm hurting myself. So number one is that hard work, that has to be consistent. That has to always be present. That's a non-negotiable. So as long as that's there, I'm trusting. I'm not a very spiritual person, but I'm trusting that good things will come. A friend of mine once said, maybe he watched this podcast and he'll know I'm talking about him, but a friend of mine once said, often the biggest breaks come when everything is at its quietest. So I think about that sometimes.
I love that.
As long as I'm putting my shift in, and I know I am, then I'm going to trust the process. And number two is, like, be open to things, and be open-minded, and kind of almost like go with the flow. I've been all over the world, and tomorrow I'm going to be going even further, because of my mindset to let this career take me anywhere, and to not be picky. And I can't afford to be picky, right? Because I'm still relatively unknown.
Correct.
I feel myself becoming less unknown kind of with each passing season or couple months, which is cool to see that progress. But I can't afford to be picky, right? So I'm not going to be picky, and I also enjoy that part of the process where this career can take me to lots of different places, to meet lots of different people, to experience different cultures and learn new languages. And it's beautiful, man. And I love it. And it's not only love playing this game, but I love that part of it as well. So that's what I'm thinking about when I think about this career and why I do it and why I continue.
I love that. That was beautiful. Thank you for the insight. Alex, thank you for joining me on the first episode of the RTP podcast. I really loved our chat. I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to have you back on at some point.
Jamie, I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. And I hope to be back on here before too long. Good luck with everything as you get it up and going. And I'm going to be looking forward to seeing this content, every single week or every other week. I forget what you said, how often they'll be coming out, but I will be, finger on the pulse. I'm excited for you, man. Good luck.
Good luck with everything, my friend.
I'll speak to you soon.
I'll talk to you then.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.